Hello, everyone, and welcome to your evidence, sources, and citation lecture. As you can see, we're theming everything this week off of Game of Thrones. I'm on the Iron Throne because I am the king for the week, and my house is House Lannister, but shout out to all of my House Targaryens, my House Starks, my House I forget what they all are. There's so many, and it's been a little while since I watched the show. One of the greatest shows in the history of television, one of the worst endings in the history of television, in my opinion. Anyways, as always, if you don't understand the Game of Thrones references and you need more examples, different examples, I'll try to give some of those throughout this lecture. But you're going to have two parts to this lecture. So this first part is going to be me explaining the various types of supporting materials that you'll read about in chapter 4. And then the next part, which is in your next folder, is about how to evaluate and find those kinds of other sources. And I'll talk a little bit more about that using Game of Thrones lingo. This one isn't too geared towards Game of Thrones, whereas the next one will be. So let's get going here. Share my screen. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is what is evidence? Well, evidence we really call support material in the public speaking world. And this is how we piece our speech together by supporting the claims that we're making. So what you're going to start to see happen in the next couple of speeches, particularly in the persuasion speech, but you'll have some claims or statements in your informative speech, is a speaker will say something, right? I live in Schaumburg. Okay, that's a statement. But how do you know if that statement is true or false? Because I could be lying and actually live in Chicago, but say, oh, I live in Schaumburg. So typically in a conversation, the next thing that would happen is the person would go, oh, where in Schaumburg do you live? And then I would say, oh, I live right off the highway on Irving Park Road and Barrington Road. So my explanation that explains Schaumburg is the support material. I'm giving a location to prove that I live in Schaumburg. So what you need to do throughout your speeches is every time you make a statement or a claim, you've got to support that with evidence. But not all claims or statements that you make require a source. So that brings us into our first thing, is there are two types of claims you might be making in a speech. The first one is a universal claim. And this means that this is a claim that you're making that's universally accepted as true. So we don't have to say that we stay on the ground on Earth because there's gravity. Gravity is this pull from outer space that blah, 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 blah. You don't need to explain that because we've all grown up knowing what gravity is. So my example here is Facebook is a social media website. I wouldn't go on to say that according to the New York Times, Facebook is a type of social media. We know that Facebook is social media. We know that it's a little bit more outdated than Instagram or Twitter or even now TikTok, but everybody knows that Facebook is a social media platform. So you wouldn't need to cite that after you say it. Empirical claims are claims or statements that you make that now make your audience go, huh? I didn't know that. And we get those thought bubbles over our head. So when you're making a statement or when you're providing a statement or making a claim that requires proof, you need to cite it. That means you have an empirical claim. So while we know that Facebook is a social media website, I might then make the claim in my speech that 68% of the US population has or uses a Facebook. 68% of the population of the United States. That needs to be proven because I can't just make my claim up. I have to be ethical as a speaker. So now I might use this statistic that I got from Oberlo, however you say that, that was taken in 2018 that proves that in 2018, 68% of the US population owns or uses Facebook. So while saying Facebook is social media requires no citation, claiming that 68% of the US population uses Facebook does require a citation. So when you need to bring in an empirical claim, or when you're using an empirical claim and you need to bring in proof, here are a couple of different ways that you can do it. And chapter 5 really lays this out for you. So hopefully you've read chapter 5 first, and now you're kind of using this lecture as like icing on the cake, but I'm just going to go over it in a little bit more detail. So there are three main types of evidence used to support empirical claims. First, you've got examples, which is something that we've already been doing. You just don't probably realize that you've been doing it. Next, you've got testimony. And then third, and finally, what we'll talk about in this portion of the lecture is facts and stats, factual data versus statistics, and how they're not the same thing. So first, let's go into examples. Examples are really the ideas that you have that aren't necessarily hard-hitting proof. These are narrations that you might tell, iterations about what happened in your day. They might be similes or metaphors. So your book kind of goes over a couple of different examples. Examples don't really need a title. They don't really need a date. They don't really need, I got this example from the New York Times. If it's an example, you should be coming up with this on your own, using your own words and your own knowledge. So these are things that you don't need to look up, but they're just kind of creative outlets that you can use. So first, your textbook talks about a hypothetical example. This might be you telling your audience about something that can happen. All right, maybe you say something like, imagine waking up on a crisp October morning, you grab your coffee, you take that first warm sip, you have your nice warm robe hugging your body, and you open your curtains to snow. Snow in October. Well, that's kind of the feeling everybody got when Apple announced its new iPhone 12. We were surprised. All right. Oh, I guess that would be an example of a real example, something that did actually happen. Okay, but a hypothetical example and real examples are kind of stories that you use to set the framework. Hypothetical example might be something, imagine that this was going on. Well, this kind of looks like what's going on today. And then real examples is more, I guess, like the story that I told with the iPhone 12. All right, so you use your own words, use your own creativity to kind of set the stage or make a scene or something like that. Then you've got literary. This is something that is vivid and creative. Maybe use a simile, maybe use a metaphor, maybe use a narration, maybe you tell a joke. So examples are really any ammunition that you have that's not technically a source, that's not technically a quotation, that you can use to explain or further illustrate a claim that you're making. Right? 68% of the US population has a Facebook. That's like three out of a family of five. 3 people out of a family of 5 have a Facebook. 4 people out of a family of 5 have a Facebook. So you use your own kind of knowledge to frame that. These were terrible examples. I'm coming up with them off the top of my head. If you need more examples, just shoot me an email and let me know and we can discuss it. All right, so that's the first one, examples. You can use examples. They require no citations. You don't have to look them up. These are just things that you've got in your own repertoire that you can use to illustrate the claims or the statements that you're making in your speeches. The next thing is your testimonial claims. And testimony is a statement given by someone else which serves as the basis for belief. Think about Law and Order SVU, NCIS, all of these like crime TV shows, these documentaries that we watch on Netflix. It's always people explaining something to a jury, identifying something to a judge, being interviewed about their accounts of what happened. You're providing a testimony. So you as a lawyer or you as a PI or you as a speaker have to go and look that information up. And if it was provided by someone else It's a testimony. So you're giving someone else's testimony or introducing your audience to someone else's account of what happened. So really, when you're looking at testimony, you want to focus on expert opinion. These are statements given by people who are in a position to know. If your topic is something medical, let's say you are giving a speech about AIDS, maybe you cite an AIDS expert or someone who has been diagnosed with AIDS. So someone who is in a position to know. They have the disease, they've treated the disease, they know someone who's died from the disease. You don't want to just ask a random person that has no experience with treating, living with, or caring for AIDS. All right. Then you have lay testimony. This is statements given by a non-expert or an eyewitness. So if you can't find an expert, maybe you find someone who's seen something happened, or someone that's a little bit familiar with it, but not like critically involved. All right. So when you're providing testimony in your speeches, you really, really, really want to find that expert opinion. If your speech is about something educational, go to an educational expert. Find an article written by a teacher, by a school administration, by a retired professor. If your speech is about something relating to cooking, quote a chef. Give us an example from Hell's Kitchen, something that is from someone who's in a position to know. All right. So we want expert opinion. We want to try and avoid lay testimony, but that's okay if you use it minimally. Okay. So examples, your own words, your own ideas to kind of illustrate something further. Testimonial claims, words and accounts from other people, preferably experts in the field, to kind of explain what's going on. Then the next thing we've got here are facts, factual data. This is data produced from measurements. We can measure it. This is direct observation from an expert, someone who's in the field, who's seen this, who has experience with it, who knows it, or historical record, something that has happened on a particular date that's documented. Now, in order to be considered a fact, they have to remain consistently true, right? The War of 1812 happened in 1812 because that's when it happened. You cannot change it. In order to be considered a professor, you need a PhD. All right. So these are things that remain true always. Schaumburg is a city in the state of Illinois. Harper Community College is a community college in the state of Illinois. Subway offers a deal called the $5 footlong. Okay. They have to remain true over time. There's a couple of different types of factual data. First, you might bring in quantitative data in your speech. This is data proven with numbers. Currently, there are 68 of you on my roster in Public Speaking 101, Speech 101, all right? That is true because I have the numbers that prove 68 of you are currently enrolled, all right? I cannot argue that because enrollment and registration shows it. Then we've got informative statements, statements that are undisputed truth, kind of like what I already said. Harper College is in Palatine, Illinois. You cannot argue this. By location, it is there. We've already talked about examples, so you know that. And then you've got exhibits, collection of art, archives, objects, and other things used to describe or explain claims. Think about court dramas. Exhibit A, a glove. Does the glove fit? You must have killed the person because the killer was wearing this glove, right? So when we bring in objects or artifacts, those act as factual data. Okay. The Mona Lisa is a painting. Look, here's the painting. Okay. So factual data can be proven true. Proven, capital T, true, cannot dispute it. This is fact. It is not fiction. It has happened. It is true. It is real. This is the answer, all caps, okay? Statistics are not facts. And this pulls the rug on their first time public speakers when I tell them stats ain't facts. A lot of the times we see 68% of the US population has a Facebook, and we think that that's capital T truth, but it's not. It's lowercase t truth. And that's because these are numbers produced from data that have been organized and analyzed to describe a relationship. So stats ain't facts because statistics are a snapshot of time, of place, of population, and of other factors. Okay, that statistic for Facebook was taken in 2018. So if I say 68% of the US population has a Facebook, I'm not true anymore because it's 2020. That number has either gone up or down. Okay, so when you're looking up statistics for your speeches, your statistics really need to have been from 2019 or from 2020. If you're citing something that was found in 2018 and it's a statistic, that's probably old. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Like right now, we're gathering the data for the US Census Bureau, which is the first time in 10 years. So the most recent census is 2010. So if you were to cite population of Illinois, you might need to use the US Census Bureau of 2010 until the US Census Bureau of 2020 is published, right? So sometimes governmental statistics are a little bit slow because it takes a while. They're on a schedule to produce these. All right, but you have to remember, somebody analyzed these numbers and maybe they got in a fender bender that morning. Maybe they skipped breakfast. Maybe they got into an argument with their boyfriend or girlfriend and they flubbed the numbers somehow. So statistics have been analyzed by a person, by a human being who has biases, who has things that are outside of their control. Maybe they had to wrap this survey up really quick because the government wasn't giving them enough money and they didn't have enough time to work on it, right? If I gave you all of your informative speech grades and everybody failed, and I was like, you guys all suck. You're the worst students I've ever had. Don't ever let this happen again. And then I said, fill out my teacher evaluations. All of you are going to tank me. You're going to say, worst teacher ever, yells at us when we do something bad, isn't available to help, blah, 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 blah. All right. And my teacher evaluations, my rate my professor is going to plummet. But if I gave you all of your informative speeches back and you all got A's and I was like, oh my God, you guys are excellent. You're the best students that I ever had, to celebrate how amazing you are. Here is pizza. Here is pop. Here's coffee. Here's donuts on me. Let's all hang out and have a good time and talk about how awesome Game of Thrones is. Oh, fill out my teacher evaluations. My teacher evaluations are probably going to skyrocket, right? So based on the feelings not only the evaluator has when they're evaluating the results, but the feelings and emotions that the takers have while filling out the survey, those are going to be interpreted differently, right? So statistics are used in a specific time, a specific place. The audience background factors have a play on how people take these surveys that are then used to produce results. So you cannot consider statistics as capital T truth. They're great lowercase t truth, a way to kind of explain what we're seeing or trends, but not capital T truth factual data. So hopefully when you see these two slides back to back, you can kind of realize how stats are not facts, okay? So when you use statistics in your speech, which are great, you should use statistics in your speech. They've got to be super duper recent. And in your next lecture, you're going to learn why recency and credibility and currency and those kinds of things are really important when focused on your sources. All right, so that's all that I have for this part of the lecture. This one is a little bit shorter than the next one. The next lecture is about evaluating your sources. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to have you watch, and then I want to explain like how to orally cite your citations and stuff like that. So if you have any questions about the type of support material you might want to use, go ahead and email me. As always, I'm free to meet with you on Zoom, do a collaborate, do a Skype call if you need to talk about some of this stuff, if you're worried about your informative speech, yada, yada, yada. You're going to learn informative speaking next week. So hold off your questions there. But yeah, if you have any questions about support material, facts, examples, statistics, testimony, please let me know, and make sure that you finish any activities that might be in this folder as well as your previous folder, and then move forward to the next lecture, which is gathering and evaluating evidence. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.